All right. So first of all, because we literally just met 2 minutes ago, again, thank you so much, man. Like this is I barely know you, hardly at all, just from the videos I've seen, and I already love you as a brother in the struggle. Like I see you and I see your bright light shining, and it makes me so happy to see other people out there doing it. So thank you ahead of time for everything you've done so far and what you're continuing to do.
Yeah, thank you. My light's not shining so bright right now from getting over the flu, but yeah, I appreciate the comments and yeah, thanks for having me on. We're all on this journey together, trying to make our way through this kind of maze that we find ourselves in, and yeah, so the more we can share, and I think it's important to reach objective truths at the same time. There's a lot of sort of misinformation and disinformation out there, not just in the mainstream, but also in the alternative as well. So I think it's good to get on the right path, which is hopefully gonna get us all out of here in the end. So that's where I'm at, and I'm not saying that I've got it all figured out or I know everything, but I think I've got a decent handle on things, and yeah, just sharing that and hopefully helping other people on their way.
For sure, brother, for sure. I think one of the truths out there is that we shine the brightest when we're struggling and having to go through something. So, if you might not feel like you're shining bright, I see a brighter shine because you're here and you got up. That's one of those things in the human story. It's not how many times we get knocked down; it's how many times we get up, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is when I had my awakening 10 years ago, I didn't, like a lot of people, I didn't have purpose. I didn't have a mission. I was just going through the motions, and yeah, I was basically really bored back in the day of living in the corporate world. So to get onto my path and purpose and mission, like it's a pleasure. It's an honor to take part in this crazy time that we're living in. So, if I have to get up and pull myself out of bed if I'm not feeling so great, then it's no biggie. And of course, I look at people around me. I've traveled a hell of a lot. I live in Mexico. Sometimes you go out and there's people rummaging through bins and stuff like that for food. So that's always a good leveler for me. I've been fortunate in that I've seen so many other cultures. I lived in Cambodia for a while. There were kids living on a rubbish dump out there. So I don't complain about things like that. And ultimately, when I talk about things like that, that really drives me on and motivates me to do more of this stuff, because really and truly, there shouldn't be one person on this planet that lives in such poverty and scarcity as that. And that makes me really angry, and it makes me upset. Not as And that's without mentioning, what's going on with the children of the world and everything like that. So we
Yeah.
live in a world that's really designed for suffering and poverty and scarcity. And I think we're in the initial stages of really exposing all of that, and exposing the tyrants behind all of this, not only in this dimension, but of course where my work goes in the fourth dimension, in the hidden. Um, and hopefully we can see an end to this human suffering. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but hopefully we're the start of that. And small seeds can grow into great oak trees, and that's personally what I'm intending to do. I want to use my life to yeah to create some good, and hopefully help future generations not live in such a world of suffering and trauma. Because a lot of what they're doing right now is starting to break down. I mean, we're not there yet, and I'm not saying that we've won yet, not by a long shot. But you look at things like the media, people losing faith with the media, and we all thought that we'd be going into supermarkets with a passport. That didn't happen in the end because of pushback. So I'm not saying they're still not going to go for things, but I think there's a lot of people now, and we see it all with the censorship all over the internet. They're trying to plug holes that are basically bursting open right now, and that's a dangerous time for them. And I think in this community, we tend to give them so much power, like they're this all powerful and this machine that can't be conquered. But I see a lot of cracks at the moment within what they're doing, and like I say, I don't think that they're getting everything their own way, and I think there's a lot to be hopeful for. So I'm feeling quite good about things at the moment, although, as I say, there's a long way to go yet. I love your cat, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, she likes to take center stage whenever possible.
I've got another lady that I do a podcast with regularly, Judith of Night Flight. I don't know if you know her channel, but
No, not yet.
her cat's always getting up and joining in on the interviews. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I agree with you. I appreciate that perspective. Just to kind of touch on one of the first things you said about where you've traveled and what you've seen in terms of the poverty. She's going to want to sit on the keyboard. That's happened. Um, I had some, the good fortune to travel quite a bit when I was younger, and I discovered a paradox that was troubling to me at the time, and then I saw it again. I used to work with from an academic side, working with research studies with soldiers with post-traumatic stress back in my former life in Texas. Uh, when I was in India, we visited a place that was considered to be one of the poorest slums in all of India.
yeah,
And from from my perspective, growing up in America, it was just horrifying. Just from the average middle class suburban life where everybody's got more than enough space on their quarter-acre property and their 4-bedroom houses and whatever, like there's
yeah,
no concept of poverty, that even though within that world there's poverty, you can go into an inner city, but in India, in the worst of the worst, it was just like, holy crap, man.
yeah. It's a crazy
But
place.
yeah, but the paradox was, while I was there walking through these slums, I didn't see anyone that looked unhappy. They were so
Absolutely.
happy, the kids especially. I mean, granted, there's sickness, there's issues that I probably wasn't actually exposed to because I'm walking through somewhere, not inside the homes and whatever, but so much joy and happiness and love. And
Yeah,
the thing that I realized is that they have no concept of the life that I come from. This is all they've ever known. And so within that, again, this beautiful human potential to find happiness in the worst circumstances, and where that was echoed later in my life in the PTSD research is that, I'm a research coordinator evaluating soldiers to determine whether or not they qualify, if their trauma's bad enough to qualify to be in the study. So I'm issuing them these measures, these, surveys, and based on their score, they either qualify for the study or they don't. And I'll never forget this guy that came in. He had no arms, no legs. He's in a wheelchair, got burns over all of his body. Just again, the worst of the worst of every soldier that I'd seen out of the 2,000 guys and women that I'd interviewed over the years. And he didn't qualify because he wasn't unhappy. He
yeah,
was
yeah,
so grateful for his life, and so just it was just it was like you could see that he was lit from within. It's just such a paradox. I actually had to go to one of the therapists after I interviewed him because I was just, it messed me up. I was just like,
yeah.
how can this guy have this perspective after what he's been through, worse than anyone else I've ever interviewed? Like, it just blew
Yeah.
me away. And that later in life, when I started having my awakening process, is something that really inspired me, because it showed me that, again, like the unconquerable spirit of the human potential, let's, what I would call the divine spark within each of us, that if it is being cultivated, is something that the darkness can't, the darkness flees from the light when you light a candle in a dark room, kind of thing.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with that. And I think that's why they go so far to do all this stuff they do. They're trying to poison us from the air, the water, the food. Energetically, we're being attacked. All this stuff. So, and I always love to turn it on its head like that. So people, you can look at it two ways. Like, why, my God, where's this? We're screwed. Why are they doing all this to us? Well, the reason they're doing it to us because they know what we are. They know how our potential. They know that human spirit. They know that they have to do this stuff because without all of this, without all of that, without if we were just left unchecked, we would be embodying that, and that would be a big problem for them. But it's unbelievable what you said there, because I've seen that so many times down the years, and it's always made me wonder how, you know, these people that have literally nothing, just smiling, like you meet them and they've got, you know, they've got the wrinkles where they're smiling, like they've
Yeah.
had a life where they've constantly smiled, and they're happy and joyful, and it's incredible to me, and it's very humbling to experience that, and it does help put things into perspective, for our first world problems when you've experienced that. I mean, I remember back in the day, I was when I was living in Cambodia, I was helping a family, um, and the guy was in a he basically he had no legs, and he used to walk along the beach, this beach, Otras Beach, on his hands every day selling jewelry, and eventually he got arthritis in his hands, so he couldn't do it anymore. Anyway, long story short, we helped the whole family. I started a GoFundMe, and we helped put his kids into school, and helped buy him a special motorbike, a disabled motorbike, so he could get to and from. But you know, his whole family, they lived in a shack. I mean, this place, it used to flood with in the rainy season, and he lived by like the river, the Suan, and you can imagine it used to flood with all the stuff in there and snakes as well. But you think that these people were like millionaires, the way they were just walking around so happy and smiling. Um, and so yeah, it's been a great leveler for me, the traveling side of things. And but in saying all of that, I do feel that, you know, there shouldn't be anyone living in such poverty, like that it's set up like that, it's set up that way, and that makes this all very wrong. So even though these people are happy and joyful, and I'm not saying we should impose our Western culture on them, and that's the way to happiness, because clearly that's not either. I do feel that what's happened with this immense poverty, which is orchestrated and organized, is truly wrong in this planet, which is set up for trauma, which is what I believe really in this kind of soul trap that we're experiencing.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. I that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk with you about from your most recent video, the Heaven and Hell video. Um, there's an idea. I'm not sure where I came upon this, but I resonate with it that there's something inherent within the human journey that we don't change direction until we have to. Because if you imagine someone walking through a forest, you know, a path, this beautiful path in the woods, whatever, some sort of beautiful situation where they're just walking and they're just enjoying themselves, and they don't have any idea, any kind of reason to change their their movement. And then they come to a cliff edge or a wall or something that forces them to have to move left or right instead of keep going straight, right? And it's only at
Yeah,
that point, that moment of challenge, if you will, that we change.
yeah,
And for me, 100%, I wouldn't be where I am today with my awakening journey had I not been faced with the challenges that I've been faced with. Those are the
yeah,
things that drove me to move beyond the box I was in, and
yeah,
caused me to grow. And so again, another paradox there, you know, like we would not be who we are without our traumas,
yeah,
and we wouldn't be able to move up, move out, move on, whatever, without those things, because we'd be just happy. It's weird, right? Because like if somebody went into one of those slums in India, let's say, and brought all this money in there, then there's the motivation, and there's the possibility of change that those people, it's not even part of their reality. You just
yeah,
drop a suitcase of ruples or whatever that currency is there, and it would be, you know, kind of a messed up experiment to do, but just an interesting thought experiment of like, how would people respond, you know,
yeah,
how would
yeah,
they change? um, I'm a huge pop culture fan, for just because of the love I see coming through it, but also because I'm a student of all the programming and all the things that Hollywood does. But I love Star Wars. I grew up with it. There's a great scene, I think in the first Star Wars movie, where Princess Leia is saying to Grand Moff Tarkin or something. She's like, the more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what 2020 was to me, and 9/11 too, but 2020 was like the next level for sure, that they
Yeah.
pushed everybody down, and unbelievable numbers of people are now popping off because of it. And
Yeah.
they wouldn't be otherwise. They'd be just in their happy life, ignorant, ignorance is bliss. Again, that's a Matrix reference.
Yeah. Well,
So
it truly is for a lot of people, and yeah, I agree to a point with our challenges can drive us into a new direction, and that's certainly true to an extent, I would say. But what's going on in this on this planet is way beyond that. I think the trauma and the poverty and the things that have been forced on humanity over the millennia, really, constant wars and famines and all this stuff. I think it goes beyond just having a challenge where we can redirect into a new direction. I think a this is a matrix that is kind of set up to induce trauma and fear and anxiety, because essentially when you look behind the curtain, that is what the this controlling energy is that feeds on that stuff. So
yeah.
it needs this planet to be full of suffering, trauma, and fear, um, for it to able to survive,
Mm-hmm.
I would say. And so um, I think what's happened, certainly before, I can speak for myself, when I woke up, when I used to think about war, I remember when it was kicking off with the States and Iraq back in, I don't know, when it was early 2000s or something. It was all on the TV and everything.
Yeah.
And I remember when I look back at myself there, I was around a friend's house and we were just watching the bombs fall in Baghdad, and I didn't even question it. I just thought, well, it's just another war, right? So and it's not until I woke up and I thought, actually, that's unbelievably evil, right? To just bomb but it's so weird. There's like a haze. There's like a spell that's been cast over us. That's in or it's disabled our ability to see simple things like what's right and what's wrong. So we've gone through our lives just accepting all this stuff. And even now, you have conversations with people, and I'm sure you do, and they'll be like, "Yeah, but it's the way it is." It's just so accepted that this place is a place for trauma and suffering, and it shouldn't be. I don't believe that it was originally designed this way. I believe that at some point this was probably a magical place to live. I mean, you just look outside your window, look at nature, and I think at some point maybe we were living in harmony with that. And I mean, it depends where you go with all of this. When you look into things like, at one point there's these theories that there were giant trees and giants and all this stuff. I mean, who knows what this world was once before? But the way it is now, I believe it's been like overlaid. There's been like if you look at this as a computer game, which is the way I look at it, there's a virus here, and this virus has really sort of taken control of things. Um, and like I say, it needs all of this pain and suffering and fear. This is why we live in a constant state of perpetual war and fear mongering all the time. This is why you watch the news or you open a newspaper, it's just fear, 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 fear,
Mm-hmm.
because the entities behind this, they need that energy to feed on. It's like they're caviar, um, and so they're very scared that people are just going to move out of that fear frequency, realize what the gig is, realize that this is all a game, and stop giving into it. I mean, I think even like things like this war that they're trying to angle, like the Russia, it's not really kicked off yet, has it? And I'm just wondering, a lot of people are just, I don't know if many people are even paying it much attention anymore. People are so sick of the constant fear peddling, especially
Yeah.
after all the COVID stuff. Um, that I don't think many people are giving it the energy that it needs right now. So what is it doing? This machine is trying to pump more and more and more, and then every day you wake up. I mean, it's unbelievable, isn't it? If
Right.
it's not a banking crisis, it's a new war. If it's not a new war, it's a new disease. If it's not new disease, it's aliens are coming to invade us. I mean, for God's sake, like it's absolutely you can. I just smell desperation from them. I really do, and having worked with clearing this stuff and knowing how, knowing what cowards these entities are, I can just see all over it that they're terrified of what's happening right now, and I think they know that ultimately they're on the way out, and they're just trying to hang on for dear life. That's the way I see it.
Hear you, man. It makes me think of the line, "The night is darkest before the dawn."
Yeah,
Again,
but
that's
there's another one. There's another one that was it the I forget it now. When the devil's cornered, it gets more insane or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or even just like an animal in nature when they, same concept, right? Like you corner some wild beast, that's when they strike.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Are you, go ahead.
no, no, Karen.
You're talking about the veil, the fog between us. That reminds me of a concept from the Toltec Mexican lineage. They call it the mitote. Are you familiar with that?
You're going to embarrass me now, aren't you? Because I live in Mexico, and you're going to know all about this theory, and I'm not going to have heard of it. No,
Oh man, I wouldn't expect anybody to know this stuff. It's actually
no,
information that
enlighten
was,
me. I'm curious.
yeah, well, it's Neil Cripps is the one that connected us, of course, and uh, at some point in our conversation, either the one that we recorded or before that, we were talking about this came up because this idea was brought to me. It's what started my awakening process is to read a book called The Four Agreements by an author, Don Miguel Ruiz, and he's from the Toltec lineage, and he's writing the book back in the 80s or 90s, I think, because he discerned that it was time for this knowledge to come back to the world because it had been purposefully hidden so that it wouldn't be lost or misused rather. But at any rate, in the beginning, their creation story involved the idea that it in the beginning, kind of like what you were describing, there was this sort of paradise-like reality, but the creators weren't interested in having that experience because that's the experience they already had with,
Right.
with the ability to see through space and time and all these abilities that we kind of inherently feel we probably have but don't know how to access right now. And so they smoked the mirror of perception is the way they describe it. They put this fog so that we would have to fall and fail and ask for forgiveness and have the human journey.
Right.
And so it's there by design, either for good or for ill, depending on how you look at it. But it's the thing that blinds us, and it's the thing that creates the resistance for us to awaken.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's two
Yeah.
sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just something I thought of related to that
Yeah.
idea.
Interesting. Yeah. Different cultures have expressed this in different ways. And I mean, I just purely I see this as maybe it was an experiment that went wrong somehow, and it's got out of hand. I don't know, but I do strongly feel that this is we're part of a soul recycling trap, and we've been recycled over and over again. We're getting tricked by the false light and the false light beings at death. I can go into that if you'd like me to go into
I'm
that a
def
little bit deeper.
I'm definitely familiar.
Yeah.
I've studied it a lot myself.
Okay.
What I would love is to talk. What I like to do is take the 30,000 foot view. The way I describe it, like step out, like look at the biggest picture possible, and then
Yeah.
zoom out further and see if there's a bigger picture within that, and then
Yeah.
zoom out further and keep zooming out until I'm as far out as I can imagine possible, looking at the entire story, the entire picture. Because I think, if we're zoomed in on a blade of grass, we don't see the whole lawn, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I come from a perspective of certainly research, but also of my own experiences, my own inner knowing, and of course, every step of the way, the spiritual bypassing is a great concern, especially the further I go along the journey. to keep that humility and the remembering of I know nothing in comparison of what's noble. Having said that, I believe that there's a benevolent force that created the entire universe, and within
Yes.
the universe is this malevolent structure.
Yes.
So, being that there's a benevolent force that created the whole game, then to me, the anything within the game is part of that purpose of that force, no matter
Mhm.
how dark it might look. There is a benevolent aspect to it, kind of the idea of the silver lining that has to be found. Can't It's not right there and obvious. You have to look for the silver lining.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I that is a realization I had somewhere along the way that gave me a lot of peace and comfort. And granted, again, that is a potential spiritual bypass to get me to not want to fight or resist in some way, right?
Mm.
So there's the possibility there. But if that happens to be true, and I study the Native American concept Wetiko or Wetiko.
Yeah. With Depot. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and then that's the devil essentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so in that 30,000 foot or million-foot view, whatever, where the creator created the devil,
Yeah.
the creator created the devil for a reason, or
Yeah.
multiple reasons, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that really is going like 30, 40,000 foot back. But yeah, I mean I definitely believe in a what I would call it like a creative intelligence is I don't really like using the word God because I think the God in this matrix is essentially an AI demonic AI system. But certainly when you pull right back, obviously, you look outside, something intelligent created all of this. So I definitely believe that is to be the case. Now, I believe that this has somehow been overlaid somehow by this virus or Watico, whatever you want to call it. Now, the question of whether that is part of creation, when I work with these entities or clearing these entities, they're like computer game characters. They don't seem to be source connected. So where they've actually come from or how they've got here is a very deep question and one that I haven't really got to the bottom of myself either. So, but I just see them as like. Yeah, just completely disconnected and just really programmed. They're like programs. That's why they can't create. They don't have that creative ability. They're one trick ponies because they don't have that creative essence that we have, which I believe we come from that creative intelligence. And I think that they're actually very jealous of that and they dislike us for that. That's why they try and disconnect us from that creative essence. They've overlaid it. They've overlaid it and given us religion, which of course is linked to the false god. Um, so they've either funneled people down there, or they've funneled people towards atheism and not believing in anything with their false narratives of evolution and all of this stuff. Like there was a bang, and then all of a sudden something appeared, and then from fish came reptiles, and then reptiles turned into monkeys, and it's just all BS. So they do their best to try and disconnect us from that true creative intelligence. And a lot of people sometimes get a little bit confused with my work because I call out the God of this matrix as evil. They often assume that I don't believe in anything at all, which is not the case because I do believe in a creative essence behind everything. Where you, like you say, when you look at it from 30 feet, and I believe that we're part of that. I think. I mean, I had a breakthrough once on an acid trip. I don't recommend it anymore, but I remember at that point, I just felt part of absolutely everything, and I don't know if you've had experiences like that. And also, I remember my ego being pissed off because all my problems, everything that I'd worked to build myself up, I remember quite specifically thinking, oh man, like I've just done all this work on myself, but yeah, I'm just part of everything. So there was a part of me that was kind of like peed. It was really interesting when I think back. But at the same time, there was also this magnificence of being part of everything, um, and probably knowing everything at that point.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what we are. I believe we're a fragmentation of that everything. And whether or not that comes down into a human body via the soul, and we get to experience this kind of like individual experience here. But I think where it's gone wrong is this AI system is used trickery and mate, like that's why it's the matrix. It's full of trickery to trick these souls at the point of death to come back round, and what they call reincarnation is actually recycling. And we see that with all the stuff that they're bringing out now in terms of Disney movies. There's a Disney movie called Soul which talks about it. The floods of NDEers coming now and saying it's all right, when you die you're going to be met by Jesus, and all this stuff. And they're kind of becoming like matrix marketeers. They're going through this experience. What's interesting, when they have these NDEs, they never want to come back down. There's always great resistance, but these entities are like, no, no, you've got to come back down. You've got a purpose. You've got a mission. And they're like, okay, then all right. And then of course, they're back down again. But they have these false light experiences. They get hit by the false white light frequency, the love bombing at death, which is it's almost like I don't know if you've ever taken ecstasy, where you have that. It's kind of like a, a an absolute loving feeling, like you love everyone and everyone loves you, right? It's the love bomb. So
Yeah.
they hit people with that frequency, and then whatever you're into in your physical life, whether it be Jesus or Buddha or angels or friendly aliens, you get met there, and they're like, oh, come with us down the white light tunnel, which I believe is the moon. And then of course you get the life review where they say, we're not going to judge you, but then they show you all your worst bits, right? So you judge yourself, and then they make you feel what the other person felt at the time that you hurt them. So they're not judging you, but they're damn sure going to make sure you feel judged, right? And then of course you've got all this guilt and shame, and they're like, well, to resolve your karma, you need to come back down, or for you not to go to hell or whatever, then you need to come back down. And the human being ignorant because they don't learn anything in their living lives, because ignorant doesn't die when we die. They're back down, they get their memory wiped under the veil of forgetfulness, and they're back down to be used as a battery for their energy, with all the fear, the anger, the trauma in this reality that's induced, and that's feeding into that AI system and these entities that feed on all of that. So there's like a loop that's going round and round, and I think that's what's happened. I think I don't like using the word trapped, because it implies that we're here and we're never going to get out. I think we've been stuck here. Let's say we've been stuck here for a little longer than we should have been. But as far as who created the evil and these entities, it's an interesting question, and I've not got to the bottom of it yet. I don't feel like it's source connected in the way that we are, but who knows?
Only the creator knows, right?
Yeah,
That you said so many interesting things that I want to touch on there. But going back to the word God, I love the idea that God is an acronym. You can call it a name if you want to, or whatever, but the acronym, each letter stands for a word. And it's something that I discovered through studying astrology, because in astrology, the fundamental movement is the qualities that you combine with the elements to get, fixed, cardinal, fixed, mutable, and different. Each zodiac sign has a different combination of cardinal and one of the elements, or fixed and one of the elements, so on and so, right? Um, Cardinal is the beginning or generative phase of the process of creation, let's say. Fixed is the static phase, and mutable is the desolative or mutative phase, right? So the acronym God is those three phases. It's generative, operative, dissolutive. It's just the process that all energy goes through in this realm. It generates it, or you're born, you live, and you die, right? And it's
Yeah.
analogous to the hero's journey, the
Hmm.
three phases of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, if you're familiar.
Heard of it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the separation, initiation, and return. And it's, the separation is, in the most simple sense, someone's going off to college. They're
Mm.
separated from the former reality of being in high school and living at home. They're initiated into the new life, sometimes literally by doing a fraternity or sorority, and they have those hazing initiation rites, but either way, you're initiated into something because it's unfamiliar and you have to
Mm.
become familiar with it. And then you gain something by going through that, and you return, you take that what you gained, and at the end of the semester, in this example, you go home and you share it with your family, what you learned that semester, right? You're
Yeah.
bringing your wisdom and your knowledge back to this community that you come from to bring all of them up and raise all of them up.
Mm.
So I like that idea. It takes away the idea, the kind of scary, or not scary, I guess, but this seemingly benevolent father figure, bearded, white bearded guy in the clouds. That's
Judging
God.
everything you do.
Yeah, yeah, and that's God, right? Like that God's a
Yeah.
dude. It's
Yeah.
not, maybe it is a dude, maybe it's a woman, maybe it's not a being, maybe it's amorphous. I don't know. I have
Mm.
my experiences with what I perceive to be spirit versus these other energies that, you can call them non-player characters or Wetiko or the devil or evil or whatever you want to call it, but it's
Mm.
distinctly different. And to kind of speak to something else you said there, they seem to not have the creative spark.
No.
And if that's the case, and they were created by the creator somehow, then they're created that way by design to serve a purpose, which to me, following that thread, takes us back to providing the resistance for us to wake up against.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but in terms of like, uh, do we have to go through like kids being tortured and raped and stuff like that? It seems to have gone too far. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's challenges, but then this seems to be like really, really, really like extreme. And I don't know if it feels right or sits right with me that an intelligent design would, in I don't know, have such um, a reality where that stuff was allowed to go on, really. But yeah, I mean, it's up for discussion. It's a theory, but also if you're coming at it from the idea that Earth is a school, then it's almost like, well, if we have our memory wiped, then because a lot of people remember their past lives, then it kind of can't be a school. That's if you're going the soul trap, but it can't be a school if you have your memory wiped. Because if you're here to learn lessons, then what good is that if you have your memory wiped? You see what I mean? So
100%.
there's all kinds of different nuances with it, and this is the importance of these discussions because we can pick the bones out of it all.
For sure. And I'd love to speak to that point specifically, if I can,
Yeah,
because
sure.
I'm a big fan of David Icke.
Yeah.
And that's one of his big kind of pillars, if you will, for why he believes he's got the right way of looking at this, because of that whole thing of like, what's the point of wiping someone's memory if you're trying to teach them something?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
hear that from the perspective of my ego within the matrix, my
Yeah.
life, this life only. But from the perspective of a school that the curriculum is designed by something that's far more vast in its understanding and intelligence and purpose than I could ever conceive of from my tiny little ego version of me, then
Mm.
uh, it does make sense to wipe the memory, because if I learn whatever I learn and then I reincarnate and I've got all the stuff I already learned, then how am I going to learn the next
Mm.
time around with whatever, if this life is meant to be these threads of the tapestry, and then there's other threads that have to be weaved in that are independent threads, but they do create the whole tapestry, then
Mm.
having it be one continuous thread doesn't allow for the whole tapestry to be
Mm.
manifested, let's say.
Yeah, I definitely take on board what you're saying, and you know, I believe that everything really is experience when you take that 30 foot back. I mean, I guess that's what consciousness is. It's experiencing things, and no doubt it's learning through that. So I guess there is an argument for that, but I don't know if it's just gone too far in terms of what is going on. You know, when you look at the brutality of what is happening here, it seems to be maybe that that wasn't initially the case, but it's got a little bit out of hand. I don't know. That's just the way I feel about it. But it's definitely interesting to evaluate all sides of the story without people getting triggered and upset, which is good. You know, we can have these conversations and you know, come to our own conclusions.
100%, 100%. And I'd love to speak on that point too, if I can.
Yeah,
Um, I love the idea that it seems pretty clear that this realm is based in duality, fundamentally. Doesn't mean
hmm
that we're stuck in duality, but we're based in duality. Coke versus Pepsi, black versus white, snowboarding versus skiing, whatever. There's
I'm a
always,
skinner.
Republican versus Democrat. There's always got to be two sides
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the context of good versus evil, and the balance, if you will, of what I think a lot of traditions call the middle road, the place of complete balance and stillness. In order to know that complete middle place, we have to know the extremes.
Yeah, yeah.
Without the most horrific, horrible extreme, we would not be able to know the opposite,
Mm.
amazing, best good.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so where these things seem beyond the programming, if you will, of some sort of benevolent creator, that's where I would not presume to know the creator's mind to see the whole picture of, yes, this is horrific, but to what end? Where
Yeah.
are we headed as a result of that horrible extreme? If we're now experiencing that horrible extreme and
Mm,
conceivably we haven't had the opposite experience, then
mm.
perhaps that's in our future. And I'm an optimist.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it like that, if everything was all love and happiness and joy and all the time, you could even argue that might get boring, you know?
100%. Isn't that
So,
where we came from? If we came from heaven, right? Like that's why we're here.
and I don't know about you, but sometimes not sometimes I know that I thrive in challenges. I love challenges. I love to challenge myself. Um, I love yeah, trying to push myself and I get a certain amount of satisfaction, as I think everyone does, when they overcome something or they fight a battle and you know they come through the other side. So I do think that there is something in what you're saying there. Um, but like I say, I just and maybe that is part of the challenge. Maybe the part of this challenge is to overcome this whole solar system, the soul trap, as I see it, luring the soul into the system. And maybe that is when we do overcome that, maybe we will experience an incredible amount of joy and freedom and everything that we say that we want. So, but it has got very, very dark, is what I would say, if that is the case, when you consider what's going on with, you know, the children and the child trafficking and you
Yeah,
know, it's got very, very, very bad. I mean, there's a test, there's something like that, but then there's something that seems to be really demonic and evil. So yeah, it's another burning question, isn't it? You know, is it part of just the experience of duality, or is something gone wrong here? I think there's two sides to that coin, really.
for sure, for sure. Yeah,
But
and
it's fascinating talking about it.
sorry,
It's fascinating talking about it.
it's the juice of the fruit for me, man. It's
Yeah,
I've been on this journey since 2011, and the first few years were deeply steeped in uncovering the darkness. What I call discovering the Wetiko, the Wetiko. Like what you don't know can hurt you, right?
yeah, yeah.
So the more one chooses to purposefully go into the darkness with your own light, knowing that it can't be extinguished and not having fear of what you're going to find in there, the greater the opportunity to reveal every shadow, to shine
Yeah.
light in every corner.
And I think you have to go right into the nooks and crannies of the darkness because I
Yeah,
think that's where a lot of the gold is, to
yeah.
be honest. I think, and the new age movement will tell you not to go there because, you got to keep your high vibrations and, all that nonsense when,
Love and light, love and light.
yeah, it's all love and light and everything like that. But, those people all they're doing is, you mentioned it earlier, they're spiritually bypassing. So we have to go in these areas where it can feel uncomfortable, can feel unsettling. We might not like what we hear, but if we learn something from it, and I believe that when you go into those aspects of it, you, that really is like holds the keys out of this, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
but so many people have been told not to look at it because they won't ascend or they won't go to the new earth or all this nonsense that's going on now. And so yeah, it's I think for people that can go deep down into this stuff, I think there's gold there. So
I agree. And I think that anyone who's not ready to do so is exactly where they need to be on their journey. Knowing my own process with it, my friend that helped me to start waking up was showing me stuff that I wasn't ready to see. And I was just like every other NPC, like fervently defending the pancake theory of how the buildings collapsed on 9/11. Like,
yeah,
oh, you just don't understand physics, brother. Because like I went to college and I have a master's degree and I know physics. You're just you only have an undergrad, so you don't understand. It's okay. You
yeah,
don't
yeah,
understand. No, no, he did understand. I didn't
yeah,
understand,
yeah,
and I had to like go through the shame and embarrassment and go back with my tail between my legs, like, fuck, man, you were right. Like, holy shit, you were right,
yeah,
and having had that experience, if he had somehow had the ability to just bloop, the whole like touch the third eye and you're awake, like the Christian retreats that you see where they just smack people on the forehead and they're like, like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah,
everything's done. No, man, I would never want to take away from someone their journey, their
yeah.
their their process of awakening. That is their sacred gift and their sacred responsibility, and it is not my place to step into their reality and force them to wake up.
Yeah, I think it's important to speak the truth, but then when the student's ready, uh, then the message will be received. I think. I mean,
Sure.
for before or when the virus came, obviously I didn't want my family members to take the you know what. So I was really, because I was coming from a place of emotion, I was like almost begging them. And of course, it didn't go down well and it didn't work. They all took it. But so, yeah, when you try and force someone, you often get resistance. But I do think it's important that, like what we're doing now, we're speaking our truth, and whoever's ready will listen to it, will hear it, and yeah, we're seeing more and more of that now. A lot of people have woken up since the virus. I can't believe Can you imagine waking up in all of that? I mean, it was traumatic enough 10 years ago, but you're right in the middle of like them running for the finishing line, and
Yeah.
you wake up to all of that. Must be incredibly difficult. And so many people, clients that I work with have that was their time when they woke up. I'm like, wow, how did you do that? Are you okay? Like, I've been doing this for 10 years and I'm still not okay. So,
Right.
um, so yeah, I think that's just symbolic of what we're seeing now of people really starting to question things. And yeah, I think the Chinese say, may you live in interesting times. And I
Right.
think whatever you say about this place, we definitely live in interesting times.
For sure. What you just said made me think of the Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the world, or be the change you wish to see in the world.
Yeah,
That's definitely been my experience, that the more I try to force information down people's throats, the more resistance I get, the more I
yeah,
just withdraw from that effort and do me and work
yeah.
on me. And this conversation is proof of that.
Yeah.
just that I chose to have a conversation with Paul Levy. Neil saw that, he commented on the video, and he and I became friends. We had a
Yeah.
couple conversations, and now you and I are talking. You know,
Yeah.
it's just, I'm not out there proselytizing. I'm not
Yeah.
knocking on people's doors. I'm just doing what my heart, every morning I get up and like, I have a job just like everybody else, and I have things I got to do, but I do my best to have a completely blank slate every day so that what I perceive to be the benevolent aspect of creation, whatever that brings to my plate, I'm ready to go as best I can discern how to step into that and just have that journey for myself each day, the hero's journey of you know leveling up each day, leveling up each moment.
Yeah.
And whatever happens out there is a reflection of what my own journey is
Yeah.
what I've started to understand more and more, because I see it in the lives of the people I know personally, and I
Hmm.
see it even in the collective, like you're saying. So many more people are waking up now, and I'm not
Hmm.
doing that. Seemingly,
Yeah.
I'm not touching any of those people, and that it's happening nonetheless because I'm waking up more. My
Yeah.
cat's my cat's meowing confirmation back there. She's like, "Wow, preach it."
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy place. It really is. Clown world, I call it. But you got to see the humor in it all as well. I mean, it's some of the stuff that's gone down the last few years have given me the biggest belly laughs I've ever had in my life. People
Sure.
driving on their own with masks on and stuff
Oh
like that.
man, it's amazing.
It's I think one day the human family will look back on these years, and say, what the hell are we doing? So yeah, it's experience and yeah, I think
I feel like uh, I'm doing my best not to use the word God, but Spirit is the funniest comedian there is. Of
yeah,
course, that's the
yeah,
that's the one that created comedy, right?
yeah,
So like, and also the darkest comedian, like
yeah, yeah,
especially for my when I fuck up and I make mistakes, like the judge in my head goes to the farthest extreme because I have such high expectations. My ego is so, I have to be the best. I have to, I have to wake up in this lifetime. I have to, all these things I have to do. And then I make a mistake and I'm human. And the judge in my head is just like, you're horrible. How dare you? You need to be better,
yeah.
And then I just end up laughing hysterically at how ridiculous it is that I'm so hard on myself, And
Yeah. Well,
it's just like
the
most
creator gave
extreme.
me a very sarcastic sense of humor and very dark. It's very much a British thing as well, the sarcasm. I don't know because
Oh,
it's like
I love
the
it.
weather or what have you, but yeah, we
The
have
weather.
we have a dark sense of humor, and yeah, so you got to laugh at it all. So
I
yeah.
grew up loving Monty Python, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
we got some great comedy shows. I mean, that I don't miss a lot from the UK, but one thing I do miss is the comedy, and yeah, some people don't get it. It's very subtle sometimes, but um, and we just take the piss out of each other a lot. I mean, I went on a hike here in Mexico, and I got up in the morning and there was a van full of Brits, right? And we were straight away just calling each other fat and all this stuff like just we don't take it personally. It's just it's just the way we get through, I think.
it's beautiful to me. There's a concept in Native American culture where there's a medicine man who's known as like the kind of the outcast of the society. He's like a trickster kind of guy. He's not evil, but his role is to poke holes in all the serious stuff.
Yeah,
And if anything is that he pokes a hole in is leads to someone getting offended, then that's an opportunity for the
yeah,
entire tribe to see
yeah,
something that was in everybody's shadow.
yeah, yeah.
So it's
Well,
a
your triggers
very important role to poke holes in everything that everything can be made fun of and should be made fun of to make sure that it's truly pure.
yeah. Yeah, of course, your triggers are where you need your healing as well. When you get triggered by something, there's often something there in the background that needs to be worked on. So
Yeah,
yeah,
sure. Oh man, this is fun, Tony.
yes,
I'm very
yeah,
grateful.
good.
I'm very grateful to have this experience with you, man. And I know you're limited on time, but
Yeah.
I'd love for us to do it again and keep going. And by the way, Neil also recommended that I reach out to Ola,
Ola, yeah, yeah.
and I
She's
did reach
great.
out to her, but I watched your interview with her from a month ago, and
Mm.
wow, man, like she's
She's great.
incredible. She's
Yeah,
incredible. Like
she's great.
I've been searching for people that know about the issues with tropical astrology because it's something that I learned about, and I wrote a piece about it on my website last summer. And it's such a fascinating topic to me because I've purposefully gone looking for traditional professional tropical astrologers just to kind of, I just want to ask them, hey, what do you think about this? You know, you've made a forecast for the full moon in Scorpio this month, but the moon's in Libra. Like, just look at this app. It shows you right there that, you know, the moon's in Libra. So like, I get that what you're saying, that according to tropical astrology, the moon's in Scorpio, but it's not actually in Scorpio. So like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
what do you
yeah,
have? And I'm not judging it because I love tropical astrology. Tropical astrology was my introduction to astrology. It led me to this issue because I loved
yeah,
it so much. I dove so deeply into it for so many years that I was like, I finally came to a place where I learned about that. It's
yeah,
not advertised, you know, it's not something that most tropical astrologers even know is a thing because they don't dive deeply into the history
yeah.
of their own system, you know.
Oh, you'll have a great conversation with her then, because
I would love to.
I don't have a background of astrology, so you'd get on really well. Have you reached out to her? Have you?
I did, yeah, a few days ago. I haven't heard back from her, but you know, in her own time.
Yeah, sometimes she takes a little while. She's really busy at the moment. After she did the interviews on my channel, she was bombarded with people that wanted readings. So,
That's
uh,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, just like you, man, like the light is just beaming out of her. It's so it's and she said either in your interview or an interview she did with someone else that I watched that from her perspective, and this is something I strongly agree with, it's been a big part of my journey, is that women are a very important part of this equation for the scales to tip, for women
yeah,
to get involved. And there's lots of women out there, especially now. Uh, you know, after 2020, there's a lot more women that are into this information and wanting to do something with their capacity. But man, just huge gift to find out that she's part of the journey out there, you know, that I didn't know she was there. So
yeah.
really cool.
I'm interviewing her again in a couple of weeks. So if she's not reached out, I'll put a word in for you.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. I'm just getting started here. This is only my 10th conversation that I'm putting out there. So
Oh, you'll do well. You've got a really good way of interviewing. It's very relaxed,
appreciate it,
very
brother.
conversational. So,
That's why it's called Conversations with. Well, brilliant, brother. Hope you continue to feel better. I'm glad that
thank
you're
you.
on the recovery phase of it.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah, we definitely will. Thanks for having me on. And if anyone wants to find me, I've got my YouTube channel, which is just my name, and my website, transcendingtimes.org. But
Yeah,
yeah, great to connect with you. And we'll definitely do this again soon.
fabulous. Thank you, Tony. I'm going to put all that information in the description box too, so that people can just click right through to your information if they want to know more.
All right. You take care.
Thanks, Tony. Have a great day. Peace,
Bye
brother.
bye.